Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the research ship Meridian, watching the stars through the large window. The ship had been exploring the outer edge of human space for 6 months. They were looking for new planets and studying strange energy readings that came from deep space. Jake was a tall man with dark hair and serious brown eyes. He had been a captain for 8 years and loved his job. The Meridian was not a warship. It was built for science and exploration. The crew of 200 people included scientists, engineers, and a small security team. The communication officer, Lieutenant Tom Hayes, turned to face Jake. His face looked worried. "Captain, we are getting a message. It is not from Earth Command." Jake walked over to the communication station. "What do you mean? Who is sending it?" "Sir, the message is from the Galactic Council. They are using their official channels. The message is marked as urgent and directed to all human ships." Jake felt. His heart beat faster. The Galactic Council was made up of 12 alien species that ruled most of the galaxy. They had been in power for thousands of years. Humans had only met them 20 years ago when Earth finally developed faster-than-light travel. The Council had never been friendly to humans. They thought humans were too young and too violent to be important. Most Council species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. "Put the message on the main screen," Jake said. The screen showed a strange alien figure. It was tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to glow. Its eyes were large and silver. Jake recognized it as a Luminari, one of the most powerful species in the Council. The alien spoke in perfect English. "To all human vessels and Earth Command, the Galactic Council hereby invokes the ancient protocol of War Quorum. All available human representatives must report to Kepler Prime within 14 standard days. This is not a request. This is a formal summons under galactic law." The message ended. The bridge became very quiet. Jake looked at his crew. They all looked confused and worried. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks stepped forward. She was the ship's expert on alien species and had studied the Council for years. Lisa was a smart woman with red hair and green eyes. She spoke 5 alien languages and knew more about galactic politics than anyone else on the ship. "Captain, this is very serious," Lisa said. "A war quorum has not been called in over 3,000 years. It is only used when the entire galaxy faces destruction." Jake turned to face her. "What exactly is a war quorum?" "It is an ancient law that brings all species together during times of great danger. Every species in the galaxy must send their best leaders and warriors. They meet to plan how to fight threats that could destroy all life in the galaxy." Dr. Alex Chen, the ship's historian, looked up from his computer. Alex was a quiet man who loved studying old records and ancient history. "Captain, I have been reading about the last war quorum. It happened when a species called the Vorthan Empire tried to eat entire star systems for energy. The Council had to work together to stop them." Jake felt cold. If the Council was calling a war quorum, something terrible was coming. But why were they asking humans to join? The Council had always treated humans like children who were not ready for grown-up conversations. "Tom, send a message to Earth Command immediately. Tell them about the summons. Ask for orders." "Yes, sir." Jake walked back to the captain's chair. The Meridian was 3 weeks away from Earth, even at top speed. Other human ships were scattered across known space. Getting everyone together would take time. 6 hours later, Tom received a reply from Earth. "Captain, Admiral Rebecca Stone is coming. She will meet us at the border of Council space in 4 days. We are ordered to wait for her." Jake knew Admiral Stone by reputation. She was Earth's top military leader and had fought in the border wars against space pirates. She was tough, smart, and did not like aliens very much. If Earth was sending her, they were taking this very seriously. Lisa was reading more about war quorums on her computer. "Captain, I found something interesting. The Council has never invited a species as young as humanity to a war quorum before. Usually only species that have been in space for at least 5,000 years are allowed to participate. So why are they asking us now?" "I do not know, but it means they are either very desperate or they need something that only humans can provide." Dr. Chen looked worried. "Captain, I have been studying the deep space sensor readings we collected last month. There were some strange energy patterns near the edge of the galaxy. They did not match anything in our databases. Jake remembered those readings. They had seemed unimportant at the time, just random energy from old stars or maybe black holes. But now he wondered if they were connected to the war Quorum. 4 days later, the Meridian met Admiral Stone's ship, the Defiant, at the edge of human space. The Defiant was Earth's newest battleship, armed with the best weapons humans had built. It was accompanied by 2 smaller ships full of diplomats, scientists, and soldiers. Admiral Stone came aboard the Meridian for a meeting. She was a tall woman with gray hair and cold blue eyes. She wore her uniform perfectly and walked like a soldier. Everyone on the ship could tell she was used to giving orders and having them followed. "Captain Martinez, I need to know everything you have learned about this war Quorum," she said. Jake, Lisa, and Dr. Chen spent 2 hours telling the Admiral everything they knew. They talked about the ancient laws, the last war Quorum, and the strange energy readings from deep space. Admiral Stone listened carefully. When they finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "I have bad news. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures, moving toward inhabited systems. 2 outer planets in Council space have gone completely dark. No communication, no energy readings, nothing. It is like they just stopped existing." The room became very quiet. Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What do you think is happening, Admiral?" "I think something is coming to destroy the galaxy, and the Council is scared enough to ask for our help. That means whatever is out there is worse than anything they have faced before." Lisa looked pale. "Admiral, if the Council is asking for human help, they must be very desperate. They have always thought we were too primitive to matter." "Maybe being primitive is exactly what they need right now," Admiral Stone said. "Every other species in the galaxy thinks the same way the Council does. They use the same technologies, the same battle tactics, the same solutions to problems. Humans are different. We think differently and fight differently." Dr. Chen spoke up. "Admiral, what if that is the point? What if whatever is coming has already learned how to beat the Council's way of doing things?" Admiral Stone nodded. "That is exactly what I am thinking. The Council has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years using the same methods. If those methods are not working anymore, they need someone who will try something completely different." Jake understood. Humans were not the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy, but they were unpredictable. Human history was full of people who won battles by doing things that made no sense to their enemies. "Admiral, when do we leave for Kepler Prime?" "Tomorrow. We will take the Defiant and 2 escort ships. Captain Martinez, I want you and your senior staff to come with us. You know more about the Council than most humans." "Yes, ma'am." Admiral Stone stood up. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to represent all of humanity at the most important meeting in galactic history. Whatever is coming, we need to be ready to fight it, and we need to show the Council that humans deserve a place at the table." Where the Admiral left the ship, Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, something was moving toward the galaxy, something that scared the most powerful beings in known space. But humans had always been good at fighting scary things. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy what Earth's children could do. The journey to Kepler Prime took 7 days. Captain Jake Martinez spent most of the time studying everything he could about the Galactic Council and their homeworld. Admiral Rebecca Stone worked with her team to prepare for whatever they might face. Kepler Prime was unlike any world humans had ever seen. The planet was covered in massive crystal structures that reached into the clouds. Each building was made from a different colored crystal that glowed with its own light. The Great Assembly, where the War Quorum would meet, was the largest structure on the planet. The Great Assembly looked like a giant diamond that had been carved by gods. It was 5 miles tall and 10 miles wide at the base. The crystal walls were so clear that Jake could see all the way through to the other side. Inside, thousands of lights moved like fireflies. As their ship landed at the spaceport, Jake saw vessels from all over the galaxy. Some ships looked like giant insects made of metal. Others were shaped like flowing water frozen in time. A few looked like they were built from pure energy rather than matter. "Captain, look at that," Lisa Brooks said, pointing out the window. Jake saw a ship that was bigger than a city. It was covered in what looked like living plants that moved and changed color. Next to it was a vessel that seemed to be made of liquid metal that constantly shifted its shape. "Each ship represents one of the 12 council species," Lisa explained. "We are about to meet the most powerful beings in the galaxy." Admiral Stone joined them at the window. She wore her best uniform with all her medals. Her face was calm, but Jake could see the tension in her eyes. "Remember, we are here to represent all of humanity. Do not let them make you feel small or unimportant. We earned our place at this table." A group of council guards met them at the landing platform. The guards were tall, thin beings with silver skin and 4 arms. They wore no weapons that Jake could see, but something about them made his skin crawl. The guards led the human delegation through the crystal corridors of the Great Assembly. Jake felt like he was walking inside a rainbow. The walls showed colors that human eyes had never seen before. Sounds echoed strangely, as if the crystal itself was singing. They passed other groups heading to the assembly hall. Jake saw beings that looked like walking trees with eyes made of starlight. Others appeared to be made of living shadow that moved without making any sound. One group floated above the ground like ghosts made of blue fire. "Captain," Dr. Alex Chen whispered, "I count representatives from all 12 council species. This is the first time in 3,000 years that they have all gathered in one place." The assembly hall was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Jake could barely see it. Thousands of seats were arranged in a circle around a central platform. Each section was designed for a different species. Some seats were filled with water for the aquatic races. Others glowed with heat for species that lived near stars. The human section was small and placed near the back. Jake noticed that their seats were the simplest ones in the hall. While other species had elaborate thrones or floating platforms, humans got basic chairs that looked like they had been added at the last minute. As they took their seats, Jake looked around at the other species. He recognized some from his studies, but seeing them in person was different. The Luminari sat in the place of honor at the front of the hall. They were tall and thin with blue skin that glowed like moonlight. Their leader, High Arbiter Veltan, was ancient even by their standards. His silver eyes seemed to look right through Jake. The Krexthal section buzzed with activity. These insect-like beings communicated by touching their antennae together. They moved as one group, like parts of a single mind. Their leader, Hive Queen Zareth, was twice the size of the others and covered in armor that looked like it was made from black diamonds. The Depth Lords fascinated Jake the most. They were aquatic beings that lived in the deepest oceans of their homeworld. They sat in tanks of dark water, but Jake could see their glowing eyes watching everything. Their leader, Deep Singer Morden, was so large that his tank took up an entire section of the hall. The Axiom Collective was the strangest of all. They were artificial beings, created by an ancient species that had uploaded their minds into machines. They looked like sculptures made of living metal. Their leader, Prime Logic Zenda, constantly changed shape as different thoughts passed through its electronic mind. High Arbiter Veltan stood up. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire hall. Without any amplification, the crystal walls carried his words to every corner. "Fellow council members, we gather under the most serious circumstances. The ancient enemy has returned. The devourers have awakened." A wave of fear passed through the assembly. Even the proud Krexthal warriors seemed to shrink in their seats. Jake had never heard of the devourers, but the reaction told him everything he needed to know. "For those who are too young to remember," Veltan continued, looking directly at the human section, "the devourers are not like other enemies. They do not want to conquer or rule. They consume. They eat matter, energy, and the very fabric of space itself. Where they pass, nothing remains, not even empty space." Hive Queen Zarath stood up. When she spoke, her voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "High Arbiter, we destroyed the devourers long ago. Our ancestors died to ensure they could never return." "Our ancestors lied to us," Veltan replied sadly. "They did not destroy the devourers, they could not. Instead, they used a great sacrifice to banish them to the edge of the galaxy." We have lived in peace for 3,000 years because our enemies were asleep in the dark between stars. Deep Singer Mordun's tank bubbled as he spoke. His voice sounded like water flowing over rocks. What has awakened them now? We do not know. But 3 worlds have already been consumed. Rigel 7, New Atlantis, and the mining colony at Kepler's Edge. Each world simply stopped existing. Our sensor arrays show nothing where they once stood. Not debris, not radiation, not even gravity. It is as if reality itself forgot they ever existed. Prime Logic Zenda's metal body shifted into a new configuration. Our calculations show that the Devourers are moving in a straight line toward the galactic core. At their current speed, they will reach the major population centers in 6 months. Jake felt his blood turn cold. 6 months to prepare for an enemy that could erase entire worlds from existence. Admiral Stone stood up. Every eye in the assembly turned to look at her. Jake could see the contempt in some of their faces. To them, she was just a representative of a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. High Arbiter, what do you need from humanity? Veltan looked surprised by the direct question. Most species would have spent hours talking about honor and ancient alliances before getting to the point. Admiral Stone, we appreciate your species' offer of assistance. However, this threat requires technologies and capabilities that your people do not possess. We ask only that humanity provide support roles, supply lines, communication relays, perhaps medical assistance for our wounded. Jake saw Admiral Stone's jaw tighten. She was being politely told that humans were not important enough to fight in the real war. What weapons did your ancestors use against the Devourers? Stone asked. Hive Queen Zareth answered. Reality anchors to prevent them from phasing out of normal space. Quantum disruptors to break down their molecular structure. Dimensional bombs that could destroy them across multiple planes of existence. And these weapons failed? Not failed, Veltan corrected. They simply were not enough. The Devourers adapted to every weapon we used. They learned from each attack and became immune to it. In the end, we could only delay them long enough to complete the Great Banishment. Admiral Stone nodded. I see. And now they have returned, presumably even stronger than before. That is correct. Stone sat down without another word. Jake could see her mind working. The other council members began discussing their military capabilities. The Krexthal offered their planet-sized hive ships that could carry millions of warriors. The Depth Lords promised their gravity weapons that could crush matter into singularities. The Axiom Collective would provide computing power that could calculate battle strategies across multiple dimensions. Each species boasted about their advanced technologies and ancient weapons. They talked about exotic matter, reality manipulation, and forces that human science could barely understand. When it was humanity's turn, Admiral Stone stood up again. Humanity offers tactical innovation, adaptive strategies, and the willingness to try new approaches. Several council members made sounds that Jake thought might be laughter. To them, human weapons were like stone knives compared to their advanced technology. Admiral, Veltan said gently, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but this enemy requires the most advanced capabilities in the galaxy. Perhaps your people could help with logistics while we handle the actual fighting. Of course, Stone replied, but Jake heard something dangerous in her voice. As the session ended, the council members began forming smaller groups to discuss strategy. The humans were largely ignored. Jake watched as species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia planned to fight an enemy using the same methods that had failed before. That night, in their quarters, Admiral Stone gathered her team. They are going to lose, she said simply. Admiral? Jake asked. They are planning to fight an adaptive N. The second day of the War Quorum began with detailed military planning. Captain Jake Martinez and Commander Lisa Brooks were assigned to work with the Council's war planners. Admiral Rebecca Stone attended the high-level strategy meetings, while Dr. Alex Chen studied historical battle records. Jake found himself in a massive room filled with holographic displays showing the entire galaxy. Alien officers from 12 different species worked at control stations that looked more like art pieces than military equipment. The technology was so advanced that Jake could barely understand how it worked. Commander Vex Thule of the Krexthal Hive Warriors approached Jake. He was a large insect-like being with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light like mirrors. His voice buzzed when he spoke. Human Martinez, your species has been assigned to support operations. You will help coordinate supply lines for our main battle fleets. Jake nodded politely, but he felt frustrated. The aliens were treating humans like helpers rather than real soldiers. He watched as the council officers planned their defense using strategies that were thousands of years old. The Luminari wanted to create a defensive line using reality anchors, devices that would prevent the Devourers from moving through different dimensions. The Krexthal planned to use massive hive ships to swarm the enemy with millions of fighters. The Depth Lords would deploy gravity weapons to crush the Devourers with artificial black holes. Lisa worked with the Axiom Collective on battle calculations. The machine beings showed her complex equations that predicted every possible move the enemy might make. Their computers could analyze millions of battle scenarios in seconds. Commander Brooks, Prime Logic Zenda said, its metal body shifting into a new shape. Our calculations show a 73.6% chance of victory if we deploy our forces according to the traditional formation used in the last war Quorum. Lisa studied the holographic battle plans. Something bothered her about them. What if the Devourers have changed their tactics since the last war? Impossible. Our historical records show that the Devourers use the same attack patterns they have always used. They are predictable. But Lisa remembered what High Arbiter Veltan had said. The Devourers adapted to every weapon used against them. If they could adapt to weapons, why couldn't they adapt their tactics too? 3 days later, the first real battle began. A combined council fleet of 200 ships intercepted a single Devourer construct near the Rigel system. Jake watched the battle through the tactical displays in the command center. The Devourer construct looked like a black metal asteroid covered with glowing red lines. It was roughly the size of Earth's moon and moved through space without any visible propulsion. As it traveled, space itself seemed to bend and twist around it. Admiral Stone stood next to Jake, watching the battle unfold. The council fleet approached in perfect formation, just as their ancient battle plans required. The Luminari ships fired reality anchors to lock the construct in normal space. The Krexthal launched waves of fighter craft. The Depth Lords charged their gravity weapons. "This is Fleet Commander Thelaris of the Luminari," a voice announced over the communication system. "All ships, execute attack pattern Alpha 7. Fire when ready." The council fleet unleashed everything they had. Reality anchors struck the construct and seemed to have no effect. Quantum disruptors hit its surface and were absorbed like water into a sponge. Dimensional bombs exploded around it, but the construct kept moving forward. Then something terrible happened. The construct began to glow brighter. The red lines on its surface pulsed faster. Suddenly, half of the council fleet simply vanished. Not destroyed, not blown apart, they just stopped existing. "What just happened?" Jake asked. Admiral Stone's face was grim. "The construct absorbed their energy weapons and used that power to erase our ships from reality. It learned from their attacks and turned them against us. The remaining council ships tried to retreat, but the construct was faster than they expected. It reached out with tendrils of twisted space and touched more ships. Each ship it touched disappeared completely, as if it had never been built. Only 37 ships escaped from the 200 that had started the battle. The Council's most advanced fleet had been defeated by a single enemy construct. The command center became very quiet. Alien officers stared at their displays in shock. Some species had not lost a major battle in thousands of years. The Krexthal warriors clicked their mandibles nervously. The Luminari's glowing skin became dim with worry. Dr. Alex Chen had been studying the battle data on his computer. He looked up with excitement and fear on his face. "Admiral, I think I understand what happened. The Devourers don't just consume matter and energy. They learn from every attack and develop immunity to it. That's why the ancient victory required banishment instead of destruction." "Explain," Admiral Stone said. Every weapon the Council used today was based on the same principles they used 3,000 years ago. The Devourers have had all that time to study those weapons and figure out how to counter them. When our fleet fired quantum disruptors, the construct already knew how to absorb and redirect that energy. Jake understood. So using the Council's most advanced weapons actually made the enemy stronger. Exactly. The more sophisticated the attack, the more energy the Devourers could absorb and use against us. Admiral Stone was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to Jake. Captain, I want you to take a small force and intercept the next Devourer scout group, but I want you to use only human weapons. Jake felt his heart race. Admiral, our weapons are primitive compared to what just failed. If quantum disruptors couldn't hurt them, how can kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives work? Maybe that's exactly the point. The Devourers have adapted to fight advanced energy weapons. They might not be prepared for simple mass and momentum. The other alien officers overheard this conversation. Commander Vex Thul approached them, his compound eyes reflecting disbelief. Admiral Stone, you cannot be serious. Human weapons are thousands of years behind our technology. They will be useless against the Devourers. With respect, Commander, your advanced weapons were also useless. At least our primitive weapons haven't been studied by the enemy for 3,000 years. High Arbiter Veltan entered the command center. His glowing skin was darker than usual, showing his distress. Admiral Stone, I understand your desire to help, but this is not the time for desperate experiments. We need to regroup and plan a more effective strategy using our best technology. High Arbiter, your best technology just lost 163 ships to a single enemy construct. Maybe it's time to try something different. Jake watched the argument between his admiral and the most powerful being in the galaxy. Other alien officers gathered around to listen. He could see doubt in their eyes. The great defeat had shaken their confidence. Finally, Veltan spoke. Very well. You may attempt your primitive attack, but we will not commit major forces to support what we consider to be a hopeless gesture. Admiral Stone smiled coldly. I wouldn't want to risk any more of your advanced ships anyway. 2 hours later, Jake found himself in command of a small human strike force. His ship was the cruiser Liberty, accompanied by 2 destroyers and 3 frigates. All the ships carried only human weapons, kinetic railguns, chemical missile warheads, and nuclear torpedoes. Captain Ryan Foster commanded the Liberty. He was a veteran of the border wars who had fought space pirates using these same weapons. His crew was experienced in the kind of close-quarters combat that the Council species had forgotten. Captain Martinez, Foster said as they prepared to leave. This is either the bravest thing we've ever done or the stupidest, maybe both. The Council's advanced weapons failed completely. We have to try something different. 3 Devourer scouts were approaching the industrial world of New Geneva. Intelligence reports said each scout was about the size of a large asteroid, much smaller than the construct that had destroyed the Council fleet. Jake's small force intercepted the scouts at the edge of the New Geneva system. The enemy ships looked like twisted metal with glowing red veins running through them. They moved in a strange pattern, as if they were dancing through space. All ships. This is Captain Martinez. Remember, we're using only kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. No energy weapons of any kind. The Liberty opened fire first. Its railguns launched solid metal projectiles at incredible speed. The projectiles hit the nearest Devourer scout and actually penetrated its hull. Dark fluid leaked out into space. Direct hit, Foster shouted. The projectile went right through their armor. The scout tried to absorb the kinetic energy, but there was no exotic energy to absorb. It was just mass moving at high speed. The Devourer seemed confused by this simple attack. Jake's destroyers fired volleys of chemical explosive missiles. The missiles struck the scouts and detonated in bright flashes. The explosions were primitive by Council standards, but they damaged the Devourer hulls in ways that energy weapons could not. The enemy scouts tried to adapt. Their hulls became thicker and harder. But when Jake's ships rammed one of the scouts, with a damaged frigate, the kinetic impact caused massive damage. The scout's hull cracked and it began spinning out of control. Captain, they're having trouble adapting to our... 2 weeks after the human victory at New Geneva, everything changed. The main Devourer force arrived at the edge of the galaxy like a nightmare made real. Captain Jake Martinez stood in the observation deck of the command station, watching the enemy fleet through the long-range sensors. The sight was terrifying. Dozens of massive constructs, each the size of a moon, moved through space in perfect formation. Around them, reality itself seemed to twist and bend. Stars flickered and changed color as the Devourers passed. Space storms followed in their wake, turning empty vacuum into chaos. Admiral Rebecca Stone joined Jake at the observation window. Her face was grim as she studied the sensor readings. Intelligence estimates 47 major constructs and over 300 smaller vessels. They're moving directly toward the core worlds. How long do we have? Jake asked. At their current speed, they'll reach the first major population center in 6 days. After that, they can hit a new system every day. The Council's main fleet had pulled back to form a defensive line around the industrial world of Kepler-6. Over 800 ships from 12 different species waited in battle formation. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, but the first week of fighting went badly for the Council. Their traditional battle tactics, even with some human modifications, were not enough. The Devourers had evolved during their long sleep. They were smarter, faster, and more adaptable than before. Admiral Stone called an emergency meeting with all the human officers. They gathered in the conference room aboard the flagship Unity, which had become the unofficial headquarters for human operations. The Council is losing, Stone said bluntly. They're still thinking like separate species fighting their own battles. We need something completely different. Commander Lisa Brooks had been working with alien tactical teams for days. She looked exhausted but determined. Admiral, I think the problem is coordination. Each species fights using their own methods. The Krexthal swarm with fighters. The Luminari use energy weapons. The Depth Lords deploy gravity bombs. The Devourers can adapt to each tactic separately. Dr. Alex Chen had been studying the enemy's behavior patterns. Admiral, I've noticed something. The Devourers seem to get confused when they face multiple contradictory strategies at the same time. Their adaptation systems can handle one type of attack, but they struggle with several different approaches happening together. Jake understood what they were suggesting. You want to create mixed crews, aliens and humans working together on the same ships. Exactly, Stone replied. But not just humans and aliens. I want Krexthal warriors working with Luminari energy, specialists. Depth Lords coordinating with Axiom computers. Every ship becomes a combination of different technologies and tactics. Commander Kate Sullivan, one of Stone's best officers, spoke up. Admiral, the aliens have never fought that way. Most Council species have barely worked together at all, let alone shared their ships and weapons. That's what makes it perfect. The Devourers have studied galactic warfare for thousands of years, but they've never seen true cooperation between species. They won't know how to adapt to it. Stone's plan was radical beyond anything the Council had ever attempted. She wanted to create integrated crews that combined the best abilities of multiple species. Human unpredictability would work alongside alien precision. Ancient wisdom would guide new innovation. High Arbiter Veltan was reluctant when Stone presented the idea. The great crystal chamber where they met seemed to pulse with tension as Council leaders debated the proposal. Admiral Stone, you are asking us to abandon traditions that have existed for millennia, Veltan said. Our species have fought as separate units since the beginning of recorded history. Your traditions are getting you killed, Stone replied. The Devourers know exactly how each of your species fights. They've had 3,000 years to study your methods. If you keep fighting the same way, you'll lose the same way your ancestors did. Hive Queen Zarath of the Krexthal spoke next. Her buzzing voice filled the chamber. Humans expect us to trust our sacred hive ships to alien crews. This has never been done. Your sacred hive ships are being destroyed by the dozen using your traditional tactics, Stone shot back. Maybe it's time to try something that might actually work. The debate continued for hours. Some species were interested in the idea, especially the younger officers who had seen human tactics work. Others were horrified by the suggestion of abandoning their ancient ways. Finally, Deep Singer Mordun of the Depth Lord spoke from his massive water tank. His voice rumbled like an underwater earthquake. "I have lived for 800 years. I have seen our fleets defeated again and again by the same enemy our ancestors could not destroy. Perhaps it is time to try the impossible." The vote was close, but Stone's proposal passed. The council agreed to an experimental program. Volunteer crews from different species would train together on specially modified ships. If the experiment worked, they would expand it to the entire fleet. Commander Sullivan was chosen to lead the first integrated crew. Her ship was the hybrid vessel Harmony, built using technology from 5 different species. The crew included 20 humans, 15 Krexthal warriors, 10 Luminary navigators, 8 Axiom tactical computers, and 5 Depth Lord weapon specialists. The first training session was a disaster. The Krexthal communicated through touch and chemical signals that other species couldn't understand. The Luminary thought in terms of energy patterns that seemed like magic to everyone else. The Depth Lords needed to stay in water tanks, making direct communication difficult. "This is impossible," complained Lieutenant Tom Hayes, Jake's former communications officer who had volunteered for the program. "The Krexthal keep trying to form a hive mind with me. The Luminari speak in riddles, and I can't even see the Depth Lords clearly through their tank water." But Sullivan was patient. She had studied each species carefully and understood their strengths. Slowly, she began to find ways to make them work together. The breakthrough came during a practice battle simulation. The Harmony faced a mock devourer construct in a computer-generated scenario. At first, the crew fought like separate groups sharing the same ship. The humans fired kinetic weapons, the Krexthal launched fighters, the Luminari charged energy cannons. Then Sullivan tried something different. She asked the Krexthal to use their hive mind abilities to coordinate rapid tactical changes. The Luminari would power up human kinetic weapons with their energy manipulation. The Axiom computers would calculate impossible flight maneuvers while the Depth Lords used gravity fields to guide projectiles. The result was unlike anything anyone had seen before. The ship moved like a living thing, constantly changing tactics faster than any enemy could adapt. Kinetic projectiles curved through space guided by gravity fields. Energy weapons powered up chemical explosives to create new types of damage. Fighter craft used hive mind coordination to execute maneuvers that individual pilots could never attempt. The mock devourer construct was destroyed in minutes. News of the success spread quickly through the fleet. More volunteers came forward, from every species. Within days, Sullivan was training 3 more integrated crews. The real test came when the devourers attacked the agricultural world of Terran Prime. The planet supplied food for dozens of star systems. Losing it would cause massive starvation. Across the galaxy, 4 devourer constructs approached the planet, escorted by nearly 100 smaller vessels. The Council's traditional fleets moved to intercept them, but Admiral Stone ordered the integrated crews to lead the attack. Commander Sullivan's Harmony worked with 3 other hybrid ships. Each vessel had a different combination of species and technologies. They approached the enemy using tactics that no military academy had ever taught. The battle was chaos in the best possible way. Human unpredictability guided Krexthal precision. Luminary energy arts powered Depth Lord gravity. Weapons. Axiom computers calculated battle plans that changed every few seconds as the crews adapted to whatever the devourers tried. Jake watched the battle from the command center, barely believing what he saw. The hybrid ships moved like dancers, never following the same pattern twice. They fired weapons that combined multiple technologies in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The devourers tried to adapt, but they couldn't keep up. Every time they developed immunity to one attack, the hybrid crews switched to something completely different. Kinetic weapons became energy beams. Gravity bombs turned into fighter swarms. Reality anchors transformed into ramming attacks. One by one, the devourer vessels were destroyed or disabled. For the first time since the war began, a major enemy force had been completely defeated. But the real victory was what happened after the battle. Alien officers who had watched the fight began asking questions. How had the hybrid crews coordinated so many different tactics? Could their own ships be modified to use multiple technologies? Veteran commanders like Krexthal Hive Commander, Zixtal and Luminary Warsinger Elrin approached human officers with requests for training. They wanted to learn human tactical flexibility while teaching their own species advanced abilities. The rigid council hierarchy began to break down as species learned to value innovation over tradition. Ancient enemies started working together. Technologies that have The Devourer reality engine appeared on the edge of the galaxy like a living nightmare. Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching the massive construct approach through long-range sensors. It was larger than any planet he had ever seen, and it trailed a wake of twisted spacetime that made his eyes hurt to look at. "Captain, the readings don't make sense," reported Lieutenant Susan Parker, the ship's new science officer. She had been studying the engine for 3 days straight. "It's not just moving through space, it's changing space as it goes. The laws of physics are different in its wake." Admiral Rebecca Stone joined them at the sensor station. Her face showed the strain of the past month. The integrated crew program had been successful, but the reality engine was beyond anything they had faced before. "What are we looking at?" "Lieutenant," Stone asked. "Admiral, imagine if someone could rewrite the rules of how the universe works. In the space behind that thing, gravity might push instead of pull. Light might move slower than sound. Matter might not behave the way it should." Jake felt cold. "How do we fight something that can change reality itself?" "Traditional weapons won't work," Dr. Alex Chen said as he approached with his latest analysis. "I've been studying the sensor data. Any ship that enters the altered space zone will find that its weapons, engines, and life support systems might stop working according to normal physics." The reality engine was moving toward the galactic core in a straight line. Intelligence reports showed that it would reach the major population centers within days. 3 more worlds had already been consumed, and each time the engine grew larger and more powerful. Commander Kate Sullivan had been coordinating with the integrated crews throughout the fleet. She looked exhausted, but determined. "Admiral, we have 47 hybrid ships ready for combat, but I don't know if any of our combined tactics will work against that thing." Stone studied the tactical displays showing the entire galactic fleet. Over 1,000 ships from 12 species waited in formation. Each vessel now carried mixed crews trained in the new cooperative fighting methods. It was the most diverse military force in galactic history. "Commander, prepare all ships for the most chaotic battle plan we can create. Every ship will use different tactics. No 2 vessels will attack the same way. If we can't use conventional strategies, we'll use pure chaos." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks had been working with the Axiom Collective on battle calculations. She approached with data tablets displaying complex probability charts. "Admiral, the Axiom computers have run millions of battle scenarios. They show only one possible way to defeat the reality engine." "What is it?" "We have to get inside the engine itself. The reality field is generated from quantum anchors deep within the construct. If we can destroy those anchors, the entire field will collapse." Jake looked at the sensor readings again. "How do we get inside something that's the size of a planet and protected by a reality warping field?" "We do what humans do best," Stone replied with a grim smile. "We improvise." The plan that emerged was the most desperate strategy ever attempted in galactic warfare. Every ship in the fleet would attack at once, but each would use completely different methods. The goal was not to destroy the reality engine, but to create so much chaos that its adaptive systems would be overwhelmed. Captain Ryan Foster, now commanding a hybrid cruiser called Freedom, would lead a direct assault using pure kinetic weapons. Commander Sullivan's Harmony would coordinate gravity attacks from the Depth Lords. Krexthal hive ships would launch massive fighter swarms, while luminary vessels attempted to destabilize the reality field with energy disruption. The human ships would try something that no sane military commander would normally consider. They would ram the reality engine with everything they had. "This is insane," muttered Hive Commander Zixtal, the Krexthal officer who had become one of Stone's most trusted allies. "We are planning to fly directly into a construct that can rewrite the laws of physics." "Sometimes insane is exactly what you need," Stone replied. "The Devourers have adapted to every logical strategy. Maybe it's time to try something completely illogical. The battle began when the reality engine entered the Centaurus system. The entire galactic fleet moved to intercept it, spreading out across 1,000,000 cubic miles of space. From a distance, it looked like thousands of fireflies approaching a black mountain. Jake commanded the Unity alongside Admiral Stone. The flagship carried representatives from all 12 council species, making it the most diverse crew ever assembled. As they approached the reality engine, he could see space itself beginning to change around them. "Captain, our sensors are reading impossible things," reported Lieutenant Parker. "Gravity is flowing like water. Light is bending in directions that don't exist. Our instruments say that the speed of light is changing." The fleet opened fire from maximum range. Thousands of different weapons struck the reality engine at once. Kinetic projectiles, energy beams, gravity bombs, reality anchors, quantum disruptors, and dozens of exotic weapons hit the construct from every direction. The engine absorbed most of the attacks, but something strange happened. The sheer variety of different weapon types seemed to confuse its adaptive systems. Instead of smoothly countering each attack, the construct's defenses flickered and stuttered. "Admiral, it's working," Sullivan reported over the communication system. "The engine is having trouble adapting to so many different attack types at once. But the victory was temporary. The reality engine began to pulse with dark energy. Space around it twisted even more violently. Several ships that came too close simply stopped existing, not destroyed but erased from reality. "All ships, begin chaotic assault pattern Delta," Stone ordered. "Every vessel is to ignore formation and attack independently. Maximum confusion, maximum unpredictability." What followed was the most disorganized battle in galactic history. Ships flew in impossible patterns, firing weapons that had never been used together before. Human vessels rammed devourer defenses while alien ships provided covering fire. Krexthal fighters used hive mind coordination to execute maneuvers that individual pilots could never attempt. The reality engine tried to adapt, but the chaotic nature of the attack prevented its systems from finding patterns to counter. Every time it developed immunity to one type of attack, 3 different weapons would hit it from unexpected angles. Commander Lisa Brooks, now serving as Unity's tactical officer, made a crucial discovery during the battle. "Admiral, I found the quantum anchors. They're deep inside the construct, but they exist in normal spacetime. If we can reach them with conventional weapons, we can destroy them." "How do we get conventional weapons inside a reality engine?" "We don't. We take the weapons inside ourselves." Jake understood immediately. "A ramming attack. We fly a ship directly into the construct and detonate our weapons inside it." Stone nodded grimly. "It's a one-way mission. Whoever goes in won't be coming back." Captain Foster's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, the Freedom volunteers for the mission. We've taken heavy damage and our engines are failing anyway. Let us finish this." "Ryan, you don't have to do this." "Admiral, someone has to, and humans are good at impossible missions." The Freedom was a hybrid cruiser crewed by volunteers from 6 different species. As it approached the reality engine, space around the ship began to distort. The vessel's hull stretched and bent as the laws of physics changed, but the crew held together. Human determination combined with alien precision. Krexthal hive mind. Coordination kept the ship flying when normal piloting became impossible. Luminary energy manipulation powered the engines when conventional physics failed. The Freedom penetrated the reality engine's outer defenses and disappeared inside the massive construct. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then massive explosions began erupting from within the engine. The quantum anchors were being destroyed one by one. The reality field began to collapse. Space-time snapped back to normal with violent force. The reality engine, no longer able to maintain its altered physics, began to tear itself apart. The explosion was visible across the entire star system. When the light faded, the reality engine was gone. In its place was only empty space and the expanding shockwave of its destruction. The remaining devourer forces, cut off from their ultimate weapon, found themselves vulnerable to the combined fleet's chaotic tactics. One by one, they were destroyed or driven back to the edge of the galaxy. The war was over. 6 months later, Jake found himself back on Kepler Prime for a very different kind of assembly. The Great Crystal Hall was filled with representatives from all 12 council species, but the atmosphere was completely changed. The rigid hierarchies that had governed the galaxy for millennia were gone. In their place was a new system based on cooperation and shared innovation. Admiral Stone had been appointed as the first human council member, but more importantly, she had helped establish new protocols that valued adaptability over tradition. The Galactic Council's military forces were reorganized around integrated crews and flexible tactical doctrines. Ships carried mixed crews as standard practice. Technologies that had been jealously guarded for centuries were now shared freely between species. Jake now commanded an exploration vessel called the New Meridian, crewed by beings from 8